Hey friends, welcome to the Empowered Homes podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to grow strong families by connecting church and home. Today we have a special episode. This is one of our series that we're playing with called Family to Family. Real life people who are living out in the ordinary everyday stuff of life, of parenting, marriage, and personal growth. And today we have the Lynchs with us to share their story about what life looks like for them and to give us some encouragement. So guys, welcome.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's fun to be here.
So before we jump in, I guess introduce yourself and kind of share with the listener just who you are and kind of what you're about.
All right, I guess I'll start. I'm Trey Lynch. This is my wife, Tiffany, and we've been married for 14 years. We've been going to this church now for, I guess, 9 years. Maybe a little bit longer, 10 years. And, we have a fun story to tell and hopefully something to, encourage other families with.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
15 years going on. 16.
15 years. Oh, man.
I do that all the
Yes.
time.
That's okay. I do too.
I'm just
So
glad this is not being recorded.
Yeah.
I know.
Good
that's
thing.
good. We just want others to feel like they can relate
Yeah.
right off the bat.
Right off the bat, this is real life.
That's right.
So, yes.
That's right.
Yeah. That's awesome.
All right.
So 15 years.
Almost 16. So at the end of
Almost
this month,
16.
so
So
July 29th.
real
Can
quick.
I recover?
We got
Yes.
you recovered.
You got it.
Yeah.
Real quick, how'd you meet? Everybody loves a good meet story. So
Well, I love to tell that story. I showed up in a single life class at Second Baptist Church and sat down and saw Tiffany stand up, and she was leading the women's ministry in that class at the time. And she gave an announcement, and I just thought, that there's an impressive woman and someone who's doing ministry among the women in the class and making a difference. And I was just very impressed. And that's how I had my first impression of her. But I just thought, I don't know if I articulated this clearly to myself at the time, but if God brings someone like that into my life as a spouse, I'll be a blessed man. And that was just, I don't know if I'll call it love at first sight, but certainly I was impressed at first sight.
So, yeah. And we became friends very quick off the bat. And we were also very involved. There was some mutual friends that were helping to build the Hispanic ministry at Second Baptist, and we were always the gringos at their gatherings. And we both knew salsa dancing, and every gathering that we went to turned into like a salsa party, and we were always the ones that were there. And we both loved to salsa too, so we ended up just always hanging out together and became really good friends fast.
This is perhaps for another podcast, but we did become close friends, and were able to observe one another in a larger group setting for, I guess, a year and a half before we really started dating seriously. And so by the time I asked her out, we started dating. I was quite certain of who this woman was. And
I think we were pretty convinced by the time we started dating, and so we dated a year. I think just because we felt like there was a rule that you had to date a year. And then we got married 12 weeks later. So,
Nice.
once that was final,
I love
we
that.
were ready to.
Yeah.
Danced your way into
That's
love,
right.
Yeah,
That's right.
where's salsa? Where does that come from? Like who learned first? And
I think it was a necessity
Separate.
in the group that we were hanging with at the time. Salsa dancing was a big deal, and so if you were going to kind of hold
you
your
learned-
own and all that, you were going to have to
I
learn
think he
salsa
learned
dancing.
separately before he even came to second, and
Maybe.
I had friends who had
Yeah.
that's,
reeled me into taking classes, and we just happened to both. It wasn't like we took it together. We just happened to both know, and it was kind of a fun
Made for a
thing that we
fun
did.
wedding.
It made for
Yeah,
fun wedding.
lots
of-
Yeah.
Single people salsa dancing.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It was very fun.
That's awesome. So you met, married, you have kids. Tell me about kind of where kids showed up, how many kids you have, and all that stuff.
Well, maybe I'll tell this story. So, the thought was that we would, enjoy each other for a while, wait 5 years, have a child, and then start having children. And then, actually adoption was something we were both interested in. And so we had a certain order of events planned for our lives. And And then we kind of met the challenge of infertility. And so I don't know if you want to say a few words about that.
When he says 5 years, we were 28, so I feel like we were pushing the upper limits when we got married. So that was not my plan to wait 5 years. But yeah, we actually, when we got married, or even talking about children before we got married, we had talked about adoption. And our plan was we would probably have 2 kids and then adopt. And so we didn't even know infertility was going to be a part of our story. But it was. And so even though our plan was not 5 years, it probably took about 4 years until Reagan came along. That's where that came from. But and so Reagan's our oldest, and so she came to our family through adoption. And then we had Lainey. She's 11. So then we had Lainey. She's biological. She's 9, and then we adopted again our youngest, who's Mason, and he's 6.
So the tell me a little bit of the journey with adoption. You said you talked beforehand, but a lot of times, and maybe the listener out there, what was the process of that to say, all right, this is what we're doing, and this we're gonna make this decision and move down this pathway?
Sure. Yeah. So we actually had we went to a fertility specialist and knew that we would need help to get pregnant. And we ended up getting pregnant twice and miscarrying. And we just knew at that point forward that, like, regardless of what was going on with us physically, that we just knew that, like, the option for us was going to be adoption. It was very clear at that time. And so we actually were involved with the adoption ministry at First Baptist Church, and we just showed up there knowing that was our heart, but we didn't know where to start. And so they still do offer classes where you can, like, learn all the ins and outs, from foster care to adoption domestically or overseas, and that was the beginning of our process. And so we had to work through, for us, we came at it from different angles. That's definitely a whole different story, but it was just the whole process of God bringing us together, and He did. And I feel like that's just the theme of Him over and over again is, like, He will bring you one step at a time, and He will provide the way when you're following Him. And so we landed on domestic adoption. That's where we landed on. And so, yeah, that's...
Yeah, I guess there's a few, details in there around, when you face the world of fertility, you're kind of starting to learn a lot of stuff that's overwhelming. And, we'd gotten to the point of just saying, hey, let's pause on some of this that we're just needing to digest and, see if we're comfortable with. And then say, well, we are comfortable with adoption. Let's just go that route and see where that takes us. So, and so we did that. Like Tiffany said, there were discomfort around, international adoption versus domestic. And, if we're going to do domestic adoption, perhaps that comes with a birth family and, a new relationship. Our family kind of extends out to the birth family, and lots of uncertainty there. And so that's kind of scary, right? So that might push you to, international adoption. And so she and I had to sort of get on the same page there. But ultimately, with friends who had come around us, and we see their story of domestic adoption and the birth families who aren't as scary as, your brain likes to tell you they are. We kind of, God led us in that direction. And so it really has been a blessing. And, of course, after that, then, of course, we had more time to sort of chew on the whole fertility world, and thankfully, Lainey is now in our family, and after that, then we've adopted Mason. So more details on our story. Yeah.
It's so cool how just most adoption stories, especially believers, how God just weaves in and puts in place all the steps. So for you guys, in the midst of that journey, and even to today, like, how did your faith in the middle of that, was it strengthened? Did you struggle? Did you wrestle with the Lord? All of the above?
We wrestled a lot. Going back to what we were saying about just even us starting on the same page, we wrote all of our fears down. Like we went pen to paper, like where are our fears? We don't want to make a decision based on fear. We want to have wisdom with it, but that way we could have some really raw, honest conversations about how do we move forward and both be comfortable with the decision and really just trust the Lord. And there's a verse in Acts that talks about how God sets our times and our places. And that verse for our family, it really through the whole journey of our family forming was my hope, because I knew if he had a plan for us to have kids, that he would set their times. And even the little ones that we lost, that he had purpose and plans even in that. And so when we got pregnant with every kiddo tested our faith in that, because it was like you are waiting and you are not sure if this baby is going to be yours or not. And so for one, it showed us how to just daily trust our kids to the Lord. Like, these are not our kids. We don't know what God wants to, how he wants to use us in this process, whether it's just to walk along someone who has a really hard pregnancy and show them that there's hope, or if this is going to be our child. And so just the continual letting go. When I got pregnant with Lainey, I actually started bleeding with her 7 weeks in. So I developed what's called a subchorionic hematoma, and it's just a big clot that they have to monitor until it's gone. And so it was half of my pregnancy. I bled, and that messes with your mind. You're just like, Lord, I don't know what's going to happen. Now, of course, the doctor, he was monitoring her every other week. And so I have a book of ultrasounds with her. And so I got to have the confidence of seeing, okay, she's continuing to grow and make progress and things are looking good. But again, it was just the Lord walking with us, going one day at a time. Just, I will give you the hope and the faith and what you need one day at a time. And so I feel like that's been our story with her. And again, we walked through it with Mason, not knowing the timing of what was going to happen when he came into our family. And we actually got to a point it had been a year in, that we were waiting for him. And the agency that we had started when we adopted, we used 2 different agencies because they didn't have, they were not accepting families when we were ready to adopt Mason, so we switched agencies. Well, they called us and said, hey, we've got 2 potential birth moms that we've heard through the grapevine that you guys are adopting. Would y'all be interested in having your profile sent over here and like that? And I call our agency, and they're like, wait, don't jump ship. Someone just like it's just the timing of everything is it's this adventure that you have to kind of sit back and go, Lord, I don't know what you're going to do. That's how you walk in the hospital. I don't know what you're going to do here, but I'm just going to walk the road that you have today. And I think that's been the theme of our parenting journey.
Well, yeah, it's learning just how out of control you are. You know, we try to build up for ourselves this illusion that we have control, and but yeah, we're not in control over, what the birth family is going to look like, or who's going to be placed in our family, or if we're going to get pregnant, with another round of fertility treatments. Waiting 8 months after we had gotten everything ready for Mason to be placed with us, and who's that family that's going to place that child with us, and it's going to be a boy, it's going to be a girl, what ethnicity is the child going to be, you have no control in the situation, and so you have no choice but really to open up your hands to the Lord and say, I give over control to you, and I accept what you give me, whether it's a challenging situation or whether it's just smooth sailing, and it completely, depending on what he does, it's going to completely shape, what our family looks like, what our future looks like. Is there going to be special needs? Is there going to be, mental health issues? All this stuff that, that can bring fear, and you have to even give that fear over to him and say, I will not fear because I will trust in you.
Yeah.
So stretch our faith immensely. Yeah.
Well, knowing you now, just seeing how faithful you guys are today is just a testimony of what God's doing through you, and just it's so awesome. I didn't know all of that before today, and so hearing you say that, it's like just how solid I see your faith from afar is just amazing. So I just wanted y'all to hear that. But fast forward to now, how old are your kids? She said
11. So Reagan's 11, Lainey is 9, and Mason is 6.
Okay, so you're in the full throes of parenting. What are some of the things you absolutely love about your current season right now?
So we were just talking about this last night, and this is what I call the sweet spot of parenting. And I'm the kind of person that's like, this stage is the best. Oh, this stage is the best. I love all the stages, but they're all old enough to do fun things that you can play together with. And so this summer they all had their first tube trip down the river, and it's like everybody can go together. Everybody's kind of nervous and they can cheer each other on. We went roller skating last night. Everyone's out. No one's sitting down. Like, we're all together. We're playing together, and it's just a fun phase of parenting. And I love seeing them like take on new tasks, because there's a lot of firsts in that, and like cheer each other on. And so that's been really fun. Did you want to add?
So I guess the thing for me, that I'm thinking about a lot lately is just, what legacy are we leaving for our children? And there's a lot of things that we love that we both kind of grew up in our, in our childhood to appreciate from our parents, just being in Texas and the hill country and, river vacations and Slitterbond and all that. And we were just reflecting on a recent trip we took where the kids are now that age where they're taking on the same love for those things. And, they're of the age now where memories are going to stick, and where they're, learning what is comfortable, what our family loves, being taking on this identity of our family that loves doing these things, these kinds of things. And so now I just love sort of being intentional to try to shape that identity for my kids and for our family. And, what is it that they see us be passionate about? And, every vacation we're thinking, what kind of memories are we embedding into these children that they'll want to come back home to revisit, and they'll want to pass on to their children. So, it's a sweet age where all that kind of starts. And, so it's a fun time to parent.
Fun, It's fun how they own that. We do one of our practices now is anytime we take any kind of trip, it's on the way home, we process top 10 over the top 10 moments of the weekend. And it's awesome. Funny now because they're like, if we don't say it, they're like, well, we're the top 10, So it's just...
They're taking ownership.
Like we said, they're taking ownership.
That's
this
awesome.
is the stuff that we do in our family.
So good. Well, I know those are some of the great things, but you've had some challenges too. What are some challenges that you've faced the last couple years in parenting, that if you could get knee to knee with another parent, sharing your heart, but also some encouragement with that too?
I think maybe it's worthwhile just talking about Lainey's story a little bit. Maybe I can just start with sort of some things we observed, and then you can maybe elaborate on kind of what we've learned or some of the sources of that. But precious Lainey, she's the sweetest spirit, and people love Lainey. But we started noticing some things about just her gross motor movement and her slowness of moving, and she was delayed certainly in walking, even from the beginning. And so always brought up kind of thoughts and concerns. Maybe there's just about 6 months behind on a lot of the developmental milestones that we expected along the way. And so from the very beginning we kind of thought there might be something there, and that when she gets older, we're going to have to kind of investigate this a little further. And so, there's been occupational therapy, and, it's been a road of therapy to try to understand some of these issues. And then I guess now that she's 9, she's of the age where you can do some more sophisticated assessments. And so we've learned even more about kind of what's going on. And I guess I'll let you elaborate on some of that.
Sure. Yeah. So we kind of had a wait and see approach. I had taken her to a neurologist when she was 4, just based on some of the things that we were seeing with her developmentally along the line. And that neurologist had said, I could probably do a test right now, and she most likely has a genetic malformation, but it'll be good to see how she develops academically, because you're doing all of the therapies right now. There's not really much more that we could do. And so as she has progressed through school, we can see a little bit of the gap widening in terms of just academically, specifically in math, we could see, but also just her ability to keep up physically with her peers. And so she didn't learn to ride a bike, a two-wheeled bike. She's just always been a little behind and running and playing with them. And anyway, we ended up at a neurologist, and he took one look at her and was like, okay, she has what's called ataxia, and that's basically a motor coordination disorder that's it's caused by a malformation of the cerebellum. So he was like, she needs to immediately go in and get an MRI, and then I want to do genetic testing as well. And so we got the MRI, and in this day and age, it's a little challenging because you get your MRI results a long time before you get your appointment with your doctor to go over the results. And so we were waiting for like the genetic, everything to get compiled and put together. So by February, I had this report from Texas Children's telling me that she was missing part of her corpus callosum. There was a malformation of her of her cerebellum. And she had a cyst in her brain. And so, but it's a lot, I was like having to look up every word in the report and go call our pediatrician and just try and put things together. Because when you get an abnormal brain report, it's really scary. And so I just needed someone to say, like, what level of concern should I be at right now as I'm waiting for our doctor's appointment? And so basically what I was told at that time was there's nothing significant in terms of concern. So there's nothing immediate that you need to be worried about, but we'll go over what it looks like. And that's really, we've seen her all along. It's not like anything has changed about her. It just helps us understand the whys behind some of the things that we've been seeing. So basically what the results showed was that she has a genetic malformation. It's called TUB-A1A, of the TUB-A1A gene. And that specific malformation resulted in her brain being formed differently. And so most of the things that we see are probably more related to her corpus callosum. It doesn't really matter, but it's interesting.
Yeah, and so we see, difficulties, academically, and a slowness and a deliberateness of thinking, and a slowness of movement, and a lot of frustration on our part at times trying to get her from doing one activity, sitting still, to it's time to get up and get your shoes on and get out the door, and so we had to learn, patience, with that situation, given that it's not something that it's not going to be something that's easy for her. And so, and obviously it affects her socially as well, with other kids, running around and doing sports, and they're talking and running around at a pace that she's not going to keep up with. And so there's going to be there's going to be a challenge for children her age to kind of understand, to accommodate her, and to sort of pull her into their world, which is moving much faster than hers. Yeah.
She'll say, so for those of you who may not know about the corpus callosum, but it's like this huge tract in the middle of our brain that connects the left and right sides. And so that's how all the communication takes place. And so if you're missing even a part of that, your brain's having to develop new ways to communicate. Yeah. And so that's why processing, whether it be understanding directions or whatnot, takes a little bit longer. Now she can understand everything she hears. She's hearing it and she'll understand, just the response time is a little bit lagged. And then, so kind of the same with movement. So it's like there's a lot of steps that go into telling your body to do certain things, and so her body's having to just work harder in order to make those connections. And so, yeah, like you said, everything's just a little bit slower with her. So, yes.
Yeah, you mentioned school, tell us a little bit about how that's all working. And we're about to start a new school year, about to jump into that. Give us some insight into that world.
You want me to start off with the schooling? So, we have, up until now, for all of our kids, we have put them into a school program, which is hybrid homeschool and private school. So 2 days a week into the school, 2 to 3 days a week at home doing homeschool. And so certainly firsthand, Tiffany and me, having worked from home, quite a lot through COVID, have been able to see some of the struggles that she deals with with attention issues, and with certainly when there's hard new concepts, she is making evasive maneuvers trying to get away from that subject matter or the table that she's supposed to be at, and so she's loses control of her body, is all over the floor in the fetal position, and Tiffany's trying to teach her, and so so school has been a struggle, and when I say a struggle, it's almost an understatement, right? And so in trying to move her through a curriculum that is basically shaped towards a normally developmental child has been a huge challenge, and a lot of anxiety on Tiffany for sure, especially prior to understanding more about her condition, is creating frustration and anxiety and a worry too of is this the right model, or are other models better equipped to handle these issues, or would other models run off and leave her, and so just trying to chew through these thoughts of what is right for her and what is best for her has been kind of it has characterized our whole schooling history, from the beginning until now. And so anyway, maybe I'll let you pick up here as we've gotten these diagnoses and some of where we're starting to land.
Yeah.
Yeah, in our thinking.
We're still learning.
Yeah.
Landing is probably not the right word.
I was like, landing.
Where we are
learning,
now.
She so she has taught me a lot about how to, here's the expectations, here's where she's at, how do we bridge to get the model to get that what she needs to learn, but to start where she's at, really. This is one of the ways God has worked. My background's in speech pathology. I worked in the elementary school, so I already, from the beginning, I kind of had eyes on, there's some developmental milestones not being hit here. Anyway, all that to say, math is really her main area. She's got some deficits in working memory, some other stuff, but in all of this, she's a really strong reader. And so we were able to find a school next year that is going to place her by math level. And then we had her psychological testing done, her educational testing done, and it was encouraging, because he was like, the thing that she has had over time is one-on-one instruction on her days at home, and that's super helpful. So we're kind of one year at a time. We're going to see if being able to kind of move back in math helps her next year. But we're learning to let go with her of what are our plans that we might have, and Lord, what do you have that's next? So we're not married to any plan that we might have. We're just trying to figure out what are her needs and
but it has been I think there's been a major shift though recently from our goal being to get her through this curriculum to instead being what is kind of developmentally appropriate for her, and what is going to push her, what are appropriate goals for her to achieve, and let's try to achieve those goals, rather than trying to get her to do what everyone else is doing at that age or that grade level. And so I think kind of letting go of those expectations is going to make a difference this year, hopefully, in anxiety levels. And yeah. And it'll be more about training, I think, her teachers and her schools, the other people who come alongside of us to help educate her that, hey, these are the expectations, and we kind of own those expectations, and so you're going to have to move in our direction a little bit.
Right. Yeah. Well, and just having to advocate, for your children in different school settings, right?
Yes.
And you and I have talked about this a little bit. And what I love is that you found the freedom to let go of expectations so that you can. And so for each of your children, it looks a little bit different right now for school, right? And so sometimes we want to think we need to be married to okay, we got to send them to public school. This is it. All of our children will do this, And so I love that you found freedom to go, okay, what's best for each child? And logistically, sometimes it might not, it might make it a little bit crazy. But you're also not just married to that one thing either. And so you can just kind of evaluate as you go. And
that's been a process. The letting go has been a process of going, okay, our plans may not be the best, and that's okay. And that's why I think next year we're going to call it, this is our experimental year. We'll see what happens. And you know what? We just want to make sure she's doing okay. Yeah, it kind of takes pressure off of us to go, this is the track. And like you said, for all of our kids, because at any moment we can find out that a way that we're going is not a good way.
Yeah.
So
I think just continuing on that theme of sort of letting go of expectations, we all have a picture of what our family's going to look like, what our children are going to look like, what they're going to achieve, where they're going to be developmentally relative to other kids, and there's. With Lainey, it's been a process of kind of, and not just her, by the way, it's all of our kids letting go of those sometimes unconscious expectations for what kids from our family should be, and recognizing how they've been made by God, and kind of letting them be on the track that God has them on, and really not just accepting it or just tolerating it, but also celebrating the giftedness, the uniqueness that how He's created them, and sort of embracing the things that they love and the speed that they're going, and seeing the beauty in it, rather than just trying to hold on to this old idea that I was dragging into this family.
That's good.
So that's a big, I think, takeaway for me.
Yeah, and what I hear from even salsa to infertility to today is this consistency of surrender in your life of whatever the Lord has, and we're going to trust Him, we're going to follow Him, and we're going to be open-handed with everything, with our lives, with our kids. And so I think it encourages me to remind me of looking at my kids of going, I probably do set some expectations based off of just the context that we're in. Our area, has to perform or has to do this, or, he's not as fast as this kid on the football team. And so for me, that just encouraging me of I gotta let those things go too, of making sure that my expectations are realistic for kids, but also intentional for each one.
Yes.
So that's huge. Well, one more question.
Yes.
I'm gonna keep you just a few more minutes. So, I love just your story of surrender. But if you could get in front of a fellow parent in your season right now, and you can give them one nugget of just encouragement or information that they can, if they're listening right now, going, "Oh, I need to write that down." What would you want to share to that parent?
All right, we're going to give you two nuggets if you're okay with that. So, I'll give a nugget, and then Tiffany can follow up. I'll give a nugget to, in this theme of, kids with, learning differences and even social differences. I'll give a encouragement, I guess, to the parents of those kids. There's a lot of pain of sort of missed expectation that goes into that, and then that pain can often be projected towards those who don't understand your family or who are trying to understand your family. They come with questions that are perhaps clumsy. We have to realize that we've received a lot of training over the years in all the right language to use and all the right appropriate approaches for this person, and we know what our kid needs, and they're coming in with great hearts trying to learn and asking how we're doing, but perhaps using clumsy language, right? And oftentimes we can get frustrated or angry that they've used the wrong phrase or what have you. But I would just say to the parents, have grace towards those who are coming to you with trying to understand and trying to move in your direction. And
in the adoption
Yep.
world and in this special needs world, there's a lot of you can just guess. There's a lot of questions and comments and things that are said that it can be easy.
Yes.
It can be easy to just be irritated, and
yes,
and so that's where he's coming from. It's just you have to realize that normally those questions come from a place of wanting to understand and help and encourage, and so just kind of being able to step back and accept that,
and to see the heart that they're coming with, not necessarily the clumsy language or the wrong word that you're not supposed to use in this community, and that that kind of thing, right? So that's one nugget.
So I guess I will speak a little bit more to maybe how friends can be an encouragement in this season. I was kind of just thinking about this on the way here, even that how a lot of times I want to step in and I want to fix I want to do all the therapies. I want to do all the research. I want to do all the things, and I can't. God's going to have a plan for her, and I'm going to have to lean into that. And yes, we'll do some therapies and all that, but really I have to just, again, going back to that theme of surrender, it's not on me. So in talking to friends, supporting, I think recognizing that too, one of the best things that you can do is just pointing your friends to Jesus. I have a friend who texts me at least weekly and just thinking of you, praying for you. And that's not necessarily just related to Liddy. She knows our story and she's walking through a similar story. But I just think that advice, just if we are pointing each other to Jesus, he's the only one who can, he knows the situation and he knows the plans he wants to work out, and none of us can do anything to fix it, if that makes sense. But I would say, practically speaking, so her diagnosis is what you consider a silent disability, and so that's a disability where you can look at someone and they look like a typical functioning person on the outside, and so your expectations for them are pretty high, but there's something going on underneath that's creating it, making it challenging for them to function. And so those are things like ADHD, it can be autism, it can be sensory, it can be an anxiety or some kind of emotional regulation. So those are tricky, and what comes with that a lot is, like we've talked about, is kind of this social, they might not have a diagnosed social disorder, but there's a lot of social anxiety.
Social isolation.
Isolation. She's constantly taking note that she's different, constantly, and pointing it out. And because of her sensory sensitivities, she might be in a group of people and they're all talking, and she'll say the conversation starts getting overwhelming and I can't keep up. And so for her, that looks like turning away. And the message that she sends to people is, I'm not interested, but what she's really doing is trying to protect herself from being overwhelmed. And so I think just for one is understanding differences and even talking to our kids about differences. And one of the ways that you can do that is talking about how that we all have gifts and strengths, or smarts, if you want to call them. It can be math smarts, it can be sports smarts, it can be emotional smarts, or art smarts, or skating smarts, gymnastics. And so some are small and some are big. And that all of us have in that small area, we all have small areas. Those are our struggles. And we all have them. And I feel like when we talk with our kids about the struggles that we have, that we need to grow in, and the struggles that they have and they need to grow in, and we just kind of make that normalized conversation, then they can better have compassion on other kids, because empathy really starts with going, hey, I struggle and I need to grow in a lot of areas. And so I think that's a good conversation just to have with kids and understanding, hey, if there's a kid in the classroom that's maybe having some behavioral challenges or whatnot, maybe there's more going on. So kind of understanding. And then one more part to that is we try to talk about like the gifts that each kids in their class have to offer. And my kids are littler, so this would look different with big kids. But when Reagan was little, I printed out a page that had presents on the page and put the name of every kid in our class. And I said, every kid in your class has a gift to offer this year because they're made in the image of God, and they're all treasures. And so, but the way that we open that gift is by getting to know them. And so let's make it a challenge this year to see what gifts God has in your class. And so, and whether that's just praying for them as, the kids, when they hear you saying their names of the kids in their class and praying for them and asking, is there anyone in your class who's sitting alone this week that might need a buddy? It's just, even if your kid struggles to be the inviter, that's okay. That's like that's a lot of pressure to put on a kid. But it just starts them thinking that this kid might be bothering me. And I haven't thought through, like, what's the whys behind that. There might be something that I need to have some compassion for. So I think that's a conversation that we can all, us included, my kids can all need that as well. So
that's really good, really good, to encourage our kids to have those conversations before they go to school, before we have issues or any of that stuff to identify. And that's discipleship too. That's helping our kids see people the way Jesus sees people. And so it's a beautiful picture of us to make sure we let everybody know that they are gifts. I like that a lot.
It's good. So. It's good for us adults as well.
Yes.
Yes. Talking to myself. That's right.
Yes, indeed. Well, guys, thank y'all so much for your time today and sharing your story and just your openness and willingness to help. And I know it will. It's going to bless some listeners and some families through Empowered Homes. So thank y'all.
It's fun.
Yeah.